All right, we'll say good morning. Let's begin. So we are picking up today's daf is Kuf Samech Tes 169, and we are picking up on Kuf Samech Tes. We're picking up, we'll say 5 lines down from the bottom. Amar Mar. Oh no, I'm sorry. I take that back. We're picking up Kuf Samech Tes on the base 168b. 6 lines up from the bottom. Tana Rabbanan. So let's begin. Tana Rabbanan. So remember, we're speaking in the topic of a lost shtaros. Specifically, again, someone shows up in Beis Din and doesn't have a shtar. Under what circumstances are we able to recreate or reconstruct the shtar? So says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan. Haresh Bava Amar Avad Shtari Shtar Chovi. We'll say a person shows up in Beis Din and they say, I lost my shtar chov. I lost my loan document. So amru edim anu kasamnu v'chasamnu v'nasannu lo. So we'll say, even though witnesses come along and say, yes, we wrote the shtar, we signed the shtar, we delivered the shtar. In close v'loas shtar, we cannot go ahead and recreate. We don't rewrite the shtar. Okay, so we'll say, so again, Bryce is telling us, I show up in Beis Din, I say I lost my shtar, even though witnesses come along and say, we attest to everything. We wrote it, we signed it, we delivered it. Says the Gemara, we do not rewrite the shtar. So, Bamedra Amurim, when is this so? B'shtari halva. Rabbi said this is by loan documents. Now look at the Rashbam for just a moment. B'shtari halva. It's about 6-7 lines up from the bottom of the Rashbam. B'shtari halva. Afilu im ba lichtov chutz me'achrayu shaba in kosvin. Da'asi lemitraf le'mi b'nei chorei. V'shema lo aved harishon. So we'll say the concern over here is that with loan documents, what are we concerned about? That perhaps either the individual does have the first document and he's just hiding it, or perhaps he lost it and he will come and find it. But either way, what we're concerned about is the ability to collect twice. So therefore, again, we will not write a second loan document lest the lender either purposely hide the first one or inadvertently lose it and then find it, and therefore end up erroneously or potentially collecting twice from the same debt. When it comes to deeds of sale, right, documents of buying and selling, kosvin, ultimately, again, we can rewrite it. Chutz min ha'achrayis shebo. I will say with the exception of, we will not put in there the achrayis clause. Take a look at the Rashbam. Aval b'shar mekach u'memkar im amru edim kasavnu v'nasanenu lo kosvin lo acher chutz min ha'achrayis shebo. So we'll say, listen to this. So let's say I claim that I went ahead and I bought the field from Ruvain, and witnesses show up, and now I lost my deed. I lost the document. I bring witnesses to Beis Din, and witnesses say, yes, it's true, Silver bought the field from Ruvain, and they say, we wrote the shtar, we signed the shtar, we delivered the shtar. So again, we could rewrite the shtar based on that. However, there is one thing we will leave out, which is achrayis. We'll say, remember again, and we'll talk about this more on Amud Beis, but when you go ahead and you sell land, we'll discuss whether or not there's an automatic assumption, but there's a concept of achrayis. Achrayis means that if for some reason the property is seized by the creditor of the seller agrees to make the buyer whole again. The Gemara is suggesting over here that when you lose a shtar and we rewrite a shtar, we'll rewrite the deed for sale, but we will not include an achrayis clause in there. So the Gemara says, but we'll say we will not go ahead and include the achrayis clause. So we'll rewrite the document, and we'll discuss why. We'll rewrite the document, but we will not rewrite the achrayis clause. Top of Kuf Samech Tes. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Af shtari mekach u'memkar ein kosvin. Shimon Gamliel says, no, even about say documents of sale, we will not rewrite. So we'll say, so Rav Shimon Gamliel said as well, that what? This Gemara is now explaining the sheet of Rav Shimon Gamliel. Hanosin matron lechadero. That will say, if you give a gift to your friend, and let's say again, I convey the gift through a shtar. So I go ahead and I give a gift to my friend, and I give him a shtar conveying ownership of that gift. Vehechzir lo es hashtar, and my friend returns to me the document. Chazra matanaso. The matana goes back with the shtar as well. The chum say matanaso kamis. The chachamim say no. Even if you return the shtar, ultimately again the matana is still in effect. So we'll say, so what is this? What's going on over here? Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Top Rashbam Kuf Samech Tes Samud Aleph. The Rashbam says, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer Afilu b'shtar mekach u'memkar in kosvin. The svirule Osios niknos b'mesir. We'll see this on Amud Beis today. Shimon holds, we'll say, that ultimately, again, documents can be conveyed, or I should say, that which is contained within documents can be conveyed simply through giving over. Which Rabbi say, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds that if you want to transfer an item, all you need to do is give over the document. And once you give over the document, you acquire ownership over that which is expressed in the document as well. We're going to further develop this. So look at the Rashbam. He says, Gabi matana v'chashinan dilma la'achar shekasu v'nasan lo shtar. So listen to this. So by matana, which is what the Gemara just quoted, I give Reuven a matana, and I convey the matana to him through a shtar. If Reuven gives me back the shtar, then what? He has effectively given me back the matana as well. That's Reb Shimon Gamliel's shita. If he gives me back the shtar, he gives me back the matana. How does this matter for our case? So the Gemara says in our case, Reb Shimon Gamliel is concerned about is the following: V'chashinon doma la'achar shekasu v'nasnon lashtar ha'mechira hechzir lo lokeach zel lemocher asashtar v'chazar lo mekcho kidamrin gab matana. So what Reb Shimon Gamliel is concerned about is the following: that maybe in this case over here, where I show up in Beis and I say that what? I lost my shtar mekach umemkar. I bought a field from Ruvain, and I claimed that I lost my shtar. What are we concerned about, Abba? So Rav Shimon Gamliel says we're concerned, maybe I didn't lose my shtar. What did I do with my shtar? What did I do with it? I returned it back to Ruvain. Abba said, now what's the impact of returning a shtar back to Ruvain? So Rav Shimon Gamliel suggests that when you return a shtar, that is tantamount to what? Returning the object itself. Returning the object itself. Therefore, again, Rav Shimon Gamliel says we won't even write shtari mekach umemkar. So also what we have over here is a machlokes. We have the Rabbanan saying that if I show up in Beis Din and say that I lost my shtar, can Beis Din reconstruct it for me? So the Rabbanan will say it depends. For shtari halva, for loan documents, no, we will not reconstruct it. We're not reconstruct out of concern that you may be trying to illegally collect twice. However, again, with shtari mekach umemkar, with documents of sale, we will reconstruct it, but without the achrayas clause. Rav Shimon Gamliel is saying no, we will not reconstruct even shtari mekach umemkar, because we are concerned that maybe the reason you don't have the document is because why? Because you went ahead and you returned it to the quote-unquote original owner, and returning the document to the owner effectively returns the land to the owner as well. Amar Mar. Suppose now we're going to go back and good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. We're going to go back and we're going to investigate this a bit more. Amar Mar. Chutz mi'achraya shibos. Remember again, what did we say? We said that according to the Tanakama, according to the Rabbanan, so you could write shtari mekach umemkar, you could reconstruct a sale document, but without the achrayas clause. So my timer, we'll say, why can't I include the achrayas clause in there? Amar Rav Safra. Shtaros asada achas. So let's remember again, this goes back, we learned this yesterday, because you cannot write two shtaros on one field. What are we concerned about if you write two shtaros on one field? We're concerned about the following. Dilma azil balchov tarif leilahai. Because let's play this out. I went ahead and I bought a field from Ruvain. So now what happens? Ruvain has a creditor who had a debt against Ruvain prior to the sale of his field to me. So he had a pre-existing lien on the piece of property that I bought. So what happens? I purchased the property from Ruvain, and then what happens? Ruvain's creditor comes along and takes the field from me. So not a problem. Va'azol hai umafik chad v'tarf l'kuchos. So I'll say, so what happens? So I go ahead, I now have achrayas. And therefore, what do? I go back to Ruvain. So let's say Reuven has no property to his name anymore. He sold off all his assets. So what can I do? I can go and seize property from someone who Reuven sold to after the date of my transaction. So I can go back and I could seize other sold property. But Amrli Lebalchov, so we'll say what we're concerned about over here is collusion. We're concerned about collusion between Reuven's creditor and me, the person who purchased a field from Reuven. The Baal Chov will go ahead and seize the property from me the first time in satisfaction of his pre-existing debt. And then what happens? I, in return, go and seize a field from someone else who Reuven sold to, who purchased after the date of my purchase. I go and I seize property. And then what happens? I say to the Baal Chov, come back and seize property again. Right? Let's pretend like you did not yet satisfy your debt. We'll discuss the problems with this arrangement. That's like you did not yet satisfy your debt. Go ahead, seize property from me. Well, first I say to him, Shofli dikumba. Give me a little bit of time now that I can get settled in this new piece of property. Vahadr ta tirfan. Come back and seize it from me. Umapik achrina, and so go ahead, come back and seize it from me. Go ahead and take the piece of property. V'hadir azil taraf lekuchos achrini, and I will go ahead and what? Seize property a second time as well. So both say what the Gemara seems to be saying over here is the following: we are concerned that if Beis Din writes for me, so remember I bought a field from Ruvain. I'm showing up at Beis Din. I'm saying Beis Din, I lost my shtar. Eidim come and say, yes, Silver bought a field from Ruvain, we wrote the shtar, we signed the shtar, we delivered the shtar, so fine, let's rewrite the shtar. Beis Din says, fine, we'll write the shtar, but we won't include in it an achrayus clause. We'll say, what are we concerned about? We're concerned that maybe either A, I'm hiding the first shtar, or B, I really did lose it, but I'll find it. Now, we'll say, when I find it, it turns out that what? I now have two shtaros that both have an achrayus clause on it. I could therefore enter into collusion with one of Ruvain's pre-existing creditors. Because what's going to happen? Ruvain's creditor is going to come along. He's going to seize my property in satisfaction of his debt. And we're in collusion together. I say, no problem. You could seize from me, because what am I going to do? I'm going to seize from someone else. Someone else who Ruvain sold to. So I go ahead, fine. That's documented. I want to now seize the piece of property. I say, creditor, give me a couple of months. Let me get settled. Come back. Hit me again. Right? Come back. Seize the property again in satisfaction of your quote-unquote debt. And it's okay, why? I have a second shtar with achrayus, and I'll once again go ahead and what? Seize a second piece of property. So we'll say if there are two shtaros, both with achrayus, I have the ability to illegally seize, it's legally one piece of property, but illegally seize a second piece of property, enter in collusion with Ruvain's creditor. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. That can't happen. I'll tell you why. We'll say, here's the problem. In order for the creditor to go ahead and collect from me, he needs what? He himself needs a shtar. After the first time he collects it, we'll say, what do? Beis Din tears up his shtar. In other words, Beis Din doesn't let a creditor walk around with the shtar that's been satisfied, because again, that would allow the creditor to illegally collect. Once the creditor collects the first time, his shtar is torn. Once his shtar is torn, then what? He no longer has the ability to collect, in which case, collusion becomes impossible. So maybe you'll say, we're talking about a case where, for some reason, the creditor's document was just never torn. Rav Nachman said, we'll say, now listen to this. Take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Before we read this inside, this is actually a very important Rashbam. We'll say it's in the shortest lines, 3 lines before it gets intermediately wide. Rav Nachman, listen to this. Kachu Seder. We'll say this is the order, ultimately, again, of collection of a debt. Malve, Bala Beis Din. So we'll say the lender comes to Beis Din, v'tzoik al halova shifra lo chovel. So we'll say, so the lender comes to Beis Din, and he goes ahead and he yells at the lova. Right? I guess the Rashbam is just talking about what normally happens. Right? He goes ahead and yells at the borrower to pay him back his debt. What happens? Umazminan leila lova bedina. So they summon the borrower to Beis Din. Ve'ilo asi mishamtin alei v'kosvin shtar tirfa lemalva sheyelech v'yefashesh achar karkaos of shalova. So we'll say, so step number 1 is, let's say the lova does not comply. Either he's a no-show, or he claims he has no assets. So Beis Din writes, we'll say step number 1 is what's called a shtar tirfa. Shtar tirfa means a document of literally collection, which gives me, the lender, the right to go and investigate the holdings of the borrower, to see what the borrower has. So let's say I find the piece of property that the borrower owes. I find it in city A. I show my shtar tirfa to the Beis Din of that city. V'yimsiru karkaosav lemalveh. That local Beis Din then Rabbi gives me what's called a shtar ad karta. The ad karta, Rabbi essentially enables me to go ahead and what? Enables me to go ahead and collect that property that I found. Then what happens? Fine. Shtar hatirfa yikren. I will say, when Beis Din gives me the shtar tirfa, so the shtar tirfa was the document from the original Beis Din to allow me to investigate the holdings of the borrower. Now I've identified a piece of land that can satisfy my debt. I give my shtar tirfa to Beis Din. Beis Din tears up my shtar tirfa, and they give me what's called a shtar ad karta. That shtar ad karta now gives me the ability to ultimately collect. He goes on. Then again, Beis Din evaluates the actual value of that property. Then after my shtar karta, Beis Din goes ahead and evaluates the property. They write for me what's called ishtar shumas nechasim, an evaluation document. Ledas kama kiblei musham de shuma hadra li olam kishema. Ma'oslav fine kishit no Beis Din shtar shuma. You can know karta pay service. So essentially, every time you want to collect the debt, you pretty much go, assuming that the lova does not have assets, your doesn't have assets, you first get the shtar tirfa, then you get the ad karta, then you get the shtar shuma. Rabbi said the idea is you can never have two of these documents simultaneously. You get one of these documents at a time, and each time you progress to the next document, the previous one is torn up. Beis Din does not let you walk around with more than one document at any particular stage. So the Gemara says, so remember again, we're wondering how could the creditor go ahead and potentially collect twice from me? So the Gemara says, after all, wouldn't his loan document be torn up? So the Gemara says, well, maybe they didn't tear it. That's impossible. Rav Nachman, kol tirfa delo ksiv bei karad l'shtar demilva lav tirfahu. We'll say, after all, any shtar tirfa where it's not written in there that we tore up the loan document is not a good shtar tirfa. V'cholat karta delo kosiv bei karani l'tirfa lav kartahu. And any shtar tirfa, any ad karta where it's not written in there that we tore up the shtar tirfa is not a good ad karta. V'chol shuma delo ksiv bei karani l'ad karta lav shumahi. And I will say any shtar shuma where it's not written that what we tore up the ad karta is not a good shuma. So we'll say here what the Gemara is saying is lemaisa, it would be impossible for a creditor to collect twice. It would be absolutely impossible. Why? Because that would presuppose that he's still walking around with that loan document the second time around. But that's impossible. Because the way Beis Din works is, as soon as you, we'll say with a loan document, as soon as you go ahead and you prove that you are owed the money, you should furnish the document, and Beis Din gives you the right to collect, then halacha l'maaseh Beis Din tears up that loan document. So what's the pshat? To which the Gemara says, lo tzricha dika'asi mikoach ha'avaseh. Because the case over here is where the creditor is not coming with a loan document. Rather, what is he coming with? He's coming with a claim of money that was owed to his father. So he's coming, I will say, not ultimately with his own claim, but rather an estate claim from his father. So he doesn't have a shtar for this. He has eidos for it, but he doesn't have a shtar. Take a look at the Rashbam. Lo tzricha da'asi mikoach ha'avaseh lekach in kosin shnei shtaros dechayshinan demalav mikoach ha'ava yava v'itrov. And lo v'yarer kizu hasada gazla me'abosai zeshem achra. So we'll say ultimately again he's coming with the claim that this field is coming to me, and he's saying this field that Reuven sold to you was in fact stolen from my father. V'hevi edim kizeh sada avosav v'amocher shemachra lazeh gazla me'avosav v'otziu miyados. We'll say ultimately again we're essentially setting this up. We'll say as a case where the creditor is making the claim without a shtar. So because he's making the claim without a shtar, he's making a claim of this was property that was owned by my father and stolen from my father. Therefore, I will say this leaves the opportunity open for exploitation and for collusion. Since there's no shtar, then ultimately what? He has the ability to double dip and to make two claims. So the Gemara says the following. So we'll say, so again, let's get refocused. That's why the Gemara is saying over here that even according to the Rabbanan, who say that if I come to Beis Din and claim that I lost my document of sale, I bought a field from Reuven, I lost my document of sale, the Eidim come and say, yes, Silver bought it from Reuven, we wrote the shtar, we signed the shtar, we delivered the shtar, Beis Din says, fine, what will they do? They'll rewrite the shtar, where I will say, no what? No achrayus clause. Why no achrayus clause? Because I will say we cannot set up a situation where there's a possibility that I'm going to have two documents of sale, both that have achrayus, because then there's a possibility of collusion with the creditor of the seller to potentially extract two parcels of land. In order to avoid that possibility, as remote as it may seem, Beis Din will write me another shtar that says I own the land, but will not include achrayus in that second shtar. So the Gemara says the following: Amalei Rav Acham Edifti Ravina, v'lamalei lemeimar le lebal chov shofli b'hayara ve'ekumba teifoklei dechevan dinakit treishtari tarif v'hadiv v'tarif. So the Gemara just goes back for just a second. In the case of where, when the Gemara was setting up the possible collusion, the way the Gemara set up was the following: that I tell the creditor, come along, seize the property from me. I'm going to go produce shtar number one. Go seize a piece of property from one of Ruvain's other transactions. I'll take the piece of property. Give me a little bit of time to get settled in this property, and then come and seize property again. So the Gemara says, if I have two shtaros, why do I have to wait between seizure 1 and seizure 2? Just go ahead and do them consecutively. To which the Gemara says, Imkain, nefishi alai baledin. Because it will say this only works if I operate a little bit under the radar. If at the end of the day I am seizing multiple pieces of property, so it will say, the assumption is when you seize piece of property with an achrayas clause, the person who you're seizing from is not exactly taking this lying down. He may take it to Beis Din as well. So we'll say, if I have multiple Dinei Torah operating against me simultaneously, chances are it'll blow the lid off the scheme. So therefore I have to tell the creditor we need a little bit of time in between the seizures, so that ultimately again I can become more settled and no one catches on to what we're doing. Fine. So we'll say, so again, back to where we are. So right now where we're holding is, if I lose my document of purchase, I lose my document of sale that I bought out of the field from Ruvain, Beis Din will reconstruct it for me, assuming that I have proper edus, but they will not include an achrayas clause. V'lichtov lahayishtara ma'alya, v'lichtov tavra lamocher. So I don't understand. There's another eight of the Gemara says. Why not go ahead and write the shtar? Let me show up in Beis Din. Beis Din, I lost my document that I bought the field from Ruvain. Here are the Eidim. The way Eidim attest to it. Let Beis Din write for me a regular shtar. Well, a regular shtar means a brand new document of purchase with an achrayas clause. You're concerned about the fact that what? That what Rabbi say? That I could double dip. That maybe now I'm going to have two shtars with achrayas. No problem. Just give Ruvain a receipt that says that what? That the only way he's chayav an achrayas is if I produce this shtar. Meaning he makes some type of siman in this shtar. This shtar dated as of whatever date. In other words, Gemara is saying you could go ahead and you could create a situation where this shtar that's being written out is the authoritative one, and should I go ahead and either find or be purposely stowing away the first shtar, essentially render it ineffective by giving Ruvain a receipt. Shover is just a receipt. And that receipt says only the shtar that silver produces, or we'll call it only shtar 2, only shtar B that silver produces is effective, is able to generate the achrayas clause. But if for some reason he comes back with shtar number 1, that is ineffective, won't generate achrayas. To which the Gemara says, V'lichtov lahayishtara ma'alyo, v'lichtov tavra lamocher, kol shtari de yifgun al arada, psulin lebar min diyafuk bizmanada. Let Beis Din give Ruvain, who sold me the land, a shover. Let them give him a receipt that says it's only if silver produces shtar number 2 that you are chayiv to honor the achrayas clause. But if it produces shtar number 1, you're not chayiv to honor the achrayas clause. What do we see from here? In Kosvin Shover, the Rabbi say we do not write receipts. We do not write receipts. Now, what does that mean? We do not write receipts. Take a quick look at the last Rashbam on Amud Aleph before you turn the page. Zosamer Shabbos Mechlokes Tanoimu v'Masdisim B'Perkim B'Shtari Havos Ze'ika Leman Domer in Kosvin Shlo Yitzarech Lishmor Shovro Min Achbarim Umal V'Shavat Shtaro Hefsid Chavos. Supposed to listen to this. You'll say to yourself, what's the downside of writing a shover, the downside of writing such a receipt? Shabbos saying, there's a big downside. The big downside is because that's what we said yesterday. If, let's say, you're Ruvain, so right, Ruvain sold me the property. I went ahead and I lost my document. I now want to go to Beis Din. I need Beis Din to reconstruct my document. And I want my achrayas clause in there, because that achrayas clause, that's my insurance. That's my insurance. I want the achrayas clause. So what happens? I have a very simple answer. Beis Din, you're worried about the fact that I'm going to have two stars with achrayas. I may inappropriately use the first one. No problem. Just give Ruvain, the seller, a receipt that says you're only obligated to honor the achrayas clause if what? If silver shows up with shtar number 2. That's great for me. But who does that put at a disadvantage? Ruvain. Why? Because now Reuven has a piece of paper that he has to watch over. See, I will say, writing a shover sounds like a nice approach, except that it places the onus on Reuven. Now, Reuven has an obligation to go ahead and safeguard this shover. So I will say, it's quite possible that the halacha says, in close shover, when we say we don't write receipts, what that means is, if I am the purchaser, the onus is on me to watch my document. If I do not do a good job and I'm not vigilant in guarding my document, so that's it, we're done. Unfortunately, what I've done is Basin will go ahead and reconstruct for me a deed of ownership, but they will not reconstruct for me ultimately again an achrayus clause. So I will say, so therefore, Allah the Gemara is suggesting over here is that this opinion would seem to reflect in kosfin shover. Again, we're going to discuss that machlokas. I'm a base. Amar Lu, they said no. Ba'alma kosfin shover. It could be about that generally we actually do write receipts. So what's happening over here? V'hacha hainu taima the dilma azal bal chov v'tarif minei delokeach. Well, say we're concerned over here is the following. We're concerned about the following case. So let's say under normal circumstances we would write a shover. We would write a receipt. Let's say again. So we would give the seller, we'll call him Reuven, we would give the seller a piece of paper that says that it's only if silver brings shtar number 2 that you are chayiv to honor the achrayus clause. But if it brings shtar number 1, you are not chayiv to honor the achrayus clause. But what's the issue over here? Here, we're concerned about the following: the dilma azul bal chov, because I'll say maybe the creditor of Reuven, the seller, will come along. The tarif minei delokeach, and ultimately again will seize the property that I purchased from Reuven. Va'azul ihu the tarif lekuchos, and I will say ultimately again I will come along, and then what? Because the creditor of Reuven seized property from me, I'm going to what? I'm going to in turn seize property. I'm going to in turn seize property from other people whom Reuven sold to. Okay, v'shover gabi lekuchos leka, and I will say here's the problem. See, the shover works fine. I will say when what? When I so remember. The shover works fine when Reuven's creditor seizes property from me, and then what? I go to Reuven. Then I will say Reuven has the receipt, and he can see which shtar I'm showing up with. But let's say I bypass Reuven. After the creditor seizes from me, who do I go to? I go to other people whom Reuven sold property to, and I seize property from them. I both say those individuals don't have the shofar. Therefore, those individuals are technically exploitable through 2 shtaros that I possess with achrayus. To which the Gemara says, "V'shofar gabi lekuchos leka sof lekuchos lav amari da'ara hadri." So we'll say, but again, at the end of the day, even if that's true, when I go ahead and I seize property from the lekuchos, from people who Reuven sold to, who are they going to go to? They're going to go back to Reuven, right? Now, once they go back to Reuven, then Reuven's going to be able to say, okay, silver, which shtar did you seize property with? And if indeed I use shtar number 1, Reuven could see that I did something illegal and bring me to base. And the Gemara says, that's fine, but adahachi v'hachi shamet v'achal peri. We'll say that's fine, except in the interim, in other words, while this process is occurring, what could I do? I could go ahead and utilize the land and consume all of the peiros on the land. In other words, even if it's true that Lamais at the end of the day, all roads lead back to Reuven, and Reuven can see if I'm illegally using shtar number 1, that still gives me a lot of time to deplete the resources of the property. Inami, therefore, the other possibility is lokech shelo b'achrayus. We could be talking about a case of a purchaser, but say other purchasers who I could be seizing property from other people whom Reuven sold to, but he sold to them without achrayus. So both say, if that's the case, and it's without achrayus, then what? They'll never go back to Reuven. If they never go back to Reuven, then it's possible that I could exploit and I could use shtar number 1 and double dip. Ihaki, if that's the case, shtari halva nami. Both say, if that's the case, then you can make the same claim with loan documents as well, not just with shtar mekach or memkar, to which the Gemara says, Hasam zuze maski. So both say, they're ultimately again, because there was money lent, so the Gemara says, Amari faise balchov bezuzi. So we'll say, ultimately again, we assume that ultimately the lochim, the purchasers, will be appeased with money. Hacha da'ara masik. And we'll say that over here where land was given, made yadi demand the masik ara bezuzi lamefayis. People know about say that those who went ahead and purchased land will not be appeased with money. So the Gemara goes, Amar Chutz min ha'achrayus shebo, hechi kasvina. So now let's go back. So essentially what we've established, Rabbosai, is the following. What we've established is, and we seem to be kind of pushing in the direction of paskening like the Rabbanon. Namely, if I show up in Beis Din, Rabbosai, and I claim that I lost my document of sale, I purchased a field from Ruvain, I lost the document. I bring witnesses. Witnesses say silver bought it from Ruvain. We wrote the shtar. We signed on the shtar. We delivered the shtar. Beis Din will go ahead and reconstruct my document, with the exception of what? Achrayus. We will not write the Achrayus clause in there, and again, because of what we've established, is the ability to exploit that. Because if it turns out that Lamaisa, I'm really hiding the first document, I could potentially double dip and see some Ruvain's other purchasers twice. In order to avoid that, we'll give you the deed of sale that shows that you're the owner, but no Achrayus. Now the Gemara says, okay, Amar Mar Chusmin Achrayus Shebo Hechi Kasvinon. So we'll say, how do we write such a document like that? What does that document look like? Amar Rav Nachman, Diksiri Hachi. Rav Nachman says, this is what it looks like. Shtara dinar. So we'll say, here's the text. Vishtar, de lo lemekbi bey, lo mishabadi, lo b'mechari. We, Beis Din, hereby write this document. This document does not entitle silver to collect from encumbered property, unencumbered property, ela ki hechi de tekom ara biyadei v'lokeach. So we'll say, if this document does not go ahead and allow me to collect from encumbered property or unencumbered property, then what does it do? We'll say, one simple thing. It attests to my ownership. So if Reuven were to come along and say, I never sold that property to Reuven, to Silber, we would have a document that says that is untrue. So we'll say, what Beis Din will do is, Beis Din will reconstruct a document that affirms my ownership, but will not give me achrayus. Amar Rafram, so we'll say, Rafram says, what do we see from here? Zoso meres, achrayus ta'os sofro. So we'll say, there's a general machlokas, which we've discussed before, which is the following. Do we assume that every sale of real estate has an automatic achrayus in it? As well as do we assume that under normal circumstances, when I purchase land from Reuven, it's understood, it's implicit in the sale that Reuven agrees to guarantee my purchase, even if what? Even if the land that I bought from him is seized by one of his pre-existing creditors. So do we assume that achrayus is implicit in every single transaction, or do we say no, it's not implicit at all? It's only part of the transaction if what? If what? If it's explicitly articulated. So Rafram says, you see from here, that achrayus ta'os, which means that if a shtar does not make explicit mention of achrayus, we just assume that that's scribal error, but the document means that there is achrayus included. How do we know this? Time of the kasav lehachi, halo kasav lechagavi. Because we'll also look at the shtar. The shtar that we're writing over here, Abu Say, explicitly says that there's no achrayus. What do you see from here? That in order to have a transaction, a real estate transaction without achrayus, what do you have to do? You have to explicitly say there is no achrayus, which shows me that if I did not include this explicit clause, then what? We would assume there is achrayus. Rav Ashi achrayus lav ta'osofer. Rav Ashi says no. Was it that we do not assume the omission of achrayus is a scribal error? Rather, Rabbi said the only time that there's achrayus in a document is when? It's if it's explicitly written in it. Umay chutz me'achrayus shebo. So we'll say, what does this document mean when it says, with the exception of achrayus, to look siv be'achrayus? The document is just making mention that what? That achrayus, we'll say, is not included here. But in Achinami, Rav Ashi says that achrayus, we'll say, is only assumed to be part of a document if explicitly written in. But we do not imply that there's achrayus if it's not explicitly stated. Hahi isisa. We'll say another interesting case. There was a particular woman who gave money to a man to purchase for her property. So we'll say what happens. Azul zabin lo shelo ba'achrayus. So we'll say, so the shaliach went ahead and purchased property for her, but he purchased property for her without achrayus. So in other words, he purchased real estate for her, but without a guarantee. So we'll say she was upset. She was upset because, again, she did not feel this was appropriate. She wanted the land, but she wanted the land with achrayus, with a guarantee. So they came before Rav Nachman. Asik Rav Nachman. Amar Lei, Rav Nachman says, the woman has a taina against her. She could claim, Litakuni shadarti chavalo labusi. I sent you for my benefit, but not for my detriment. In other words, I sent you as my shaliach, ultimately again to carry out this real estate transaction on my behalf in a beneficial way. You did so in a detrimental way. So we'll say, so what's the resolution over here? So Rav Nachman says something amazing. Rav Nachman said, Zil zabne mine shelo ba'achrayis. So he said to the shaliach, you go ahead and you need to purchase this property yourself from the seller without achrayis. V'hadar zabne nehila ba'achrayis. And then resell it to the woman with achrayis. So we'll say, so this is a very very, very strange case. See what's happening over here? The shaliach did something wrong. He went against the wishes of the principal. He bought it with arachrayis. Rav Nachman Shita seems to be, okay, you now buy it from the principal, from the seller with arachrayis, and resell it to the woman with arachrayis. So what's the pshat? We'll say, first of all, we know that in any case where a shaliach acts against the wishes of the mishalech, we'll say, what happens? The shlichos is cancelled. So listen to this. So this case is brought down in Shulchan Aruch. So this is in Kuf Pei Beis. Sivav. Listen to this case. Nosan ma'os l'shlucho liknos lo karka. The kanal shlo b'achrayis. Harei ze'avus. V'ashliach lokeach osa la'atzmo shlo b'achrayis kimo shasa. V'chozer moch l'mishalech b'achrayis. Chol v'kana osa v'ma'osa v'achrayis ala shaliach. So I'll say, so the Mechaber quotes the halacha as stated in the Gemara. Naming that in this case, where the shaliach bought it with arachrayis, the shaliach then buys it directly from the seller, right? Then resells it to the mishaleach, but resells it with the mishaleach, ultimately again with achrayas. So the Rama says, what's happening over here? He says, v'dafka shamishaleach masbik atzmo ba'achrayus hashaliach v'rotze b'kim hamekach aval im eino masbik atzmo lozeh v'rotze levatel harushus biyador. So the Rama gives two qualifications. Number one, this is assuming the Mishaleach is happy with this arrangement. But if the Mishaleach is not happy with this arrangement, then what? Then the Mishaleach has the right to simply void the Shlichus. Furthermore, v'yesh omrim dedavka she'ein lo l'shleach lahachzir ma'osa l'mishaleach. Aval im rotza lahachzir l'ma'osa rishus b'yador. We'll say furthermore, the Rama says that if the Shaliach says, you know what, I'm sorry, I messed up, here is your money back, the Shaliach has the ability to do so as well. The Rama posits that if the money is still there, in other words, the Mishaleach, let's say the Shaliach could give back the money to the Mishaleach, then he could void the whole Shlichus. So we'll say, so the Rama says there are two qualifications here. Number one, this case only works if the Mishaleach is happy with this arrangement, or number two, that the Shaliach does not have access to the money. But if the Mishaleach is not happy with this setup, the Mishaleach could void the Shlichus, or if the Shaliach is not happy with this arrangement, and the Shaliach could refund the money, bless you, then the Shaliach has the ability to do that as well. Fine. Well, so let's just go a little bit weiter, we'll have to stop. So we'll remember again, we saw on the bright side, on Amud Aleph, that's what? Rabbi Shimon says that if I give someone a gift, and I convey that gift with a shtar, then what happens? When the recipient returns the shtar, they return the gift as well. My time with Rav Shimon Gamliel. So what's Rav Shimon Gamliel's logic? Because it's as if that the giver is saying, this gift is yours as long as the shtar is in your hand. Maskif Rabbi says, really? Nignov o avad nami. If that's the case, then what happens if the let's say the recipient loses the shtar or the shtar is stolen? They no longer have the shtar. Does that mean that halacha lemaisa again they no longer own the gift? Rather, says the Gemara, Amar Rabba ba'osios niknos b'mesira kamiflagi. Rather, Rabbi said the machlokes over here is, can you convey ownership of something simply by giving over the document? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel savra osios niknos b'mesira. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel holds that yes, you can convey ownership to something by simply giving over the document. For Rabbanan Savri ain't osios nikos b'mesira. The Rabbanan say no, but osios nikos b'mesira means in a shtar, it's not the document that's valuable; it's what's written in the document that's valuable. Shimon Gamliel says when you give over the document, you give over that which is written in the document as well. Versus the Rabbanan who say no, giving over a document by itself does not affect a transaction, but rather again some supplemental king is necessary as well. But so stop over. We'll pick up a Meretz Hashem with this machlokes tomorrow.